Great.
Okay.
I'm great because I'm just sitting here today. I'm just trying to catch up on everything at this point.
Right.
So I'm ready when you both are. Let me get my other book. Let me get my other book. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
I'm
let me
back.
say a few things about kind of where we've been and where we're going in this process. The hope and conflict method is a stepwise method to addressing conflict in a congregation or conflict any place, but this is aimed at a congregation. It is based on, as we've talked about, it's based on family therapy and family systems and a systemic perspective on seeing a church organization as a whole, as a holistic entity, as an organism, and thus interconnected in lots of ways, known and unknown. This particular way gets at finding what are the underlying issues involved in a particular conflict. As I've said many times, the presenting issue, what we're fighting about, is not the real underlying process that's going on. It is usually more than that. It is usually deeper than that. It's usually connected with history, with context, and it's usually about either change needs to happen or change is happening and we don't like it. You know, those are the pretty commonalities of a church situation. You go through the process, you look at the structures. How are the structures organized? How is the church organized in terms of the roles and the rules of the boards and the leaders? So is it clear who does what and who has the authority to do what and where to make decisions to lead in certain ways? And are people over functioning or under functioning? Are there bad triangles in that structure? Are there all kind of stuff? Then you start listening to the stories, and you try to find out what's the narrative behind the life of this congregation, and are they telling themselves a story about themselves that's actually true, or are they telling themselves a myth, a pretend story about what they want to be, or what they used to be, or what they think they ought to be, but is not really tied to who they are and where they are right now. Getting in touch with a real true story. If those two don't get us some real insights about what's going on here, then we learn from the symptoms. What are the crazy things that are happening that are, indications that something's gone wrong here? There's a noise in the engine of your car. That's a symptom. Who knows? And even where the noise is coming from may not be where the noise is coming from. It's a symptom of something else. So we start looking at those symptoms and try to discover what else is going on in this congregation. What are the underlying issues in this congregation's history and context and neighborhood, or individuals or whatever. We put together then a systemic, hopeful hypothesis that gives us a little leg up of saying, okay, here's what we can try to work on. The hypothesis and Monique, if you want to separate issue, it's time to talk about building a hypothesis, which is what we talked about last week. We can spend some time doing that if you want to do that on your own.
And
The reason I call it the hypothesis is that it's a temporary, provisional kind of thing. A scientific hypothesis is we think if we go into this experiment, this is what we'll find. But you don't know if that's what you're going to find for sure. All of the research and all of the literature to here suggests that there's a good likelihood that this will happen. But of course, it doesn't always. So if we go into the next step after the hypothesis and try some things, try some strategic interventions, and they don't work, then you'll go back and say, so is our hypothesis actually accurate? And then you may need to go back and revisit the symptoms, or look again at the stories, or look again at the structures to see what did we miss? What else is going on here? And it's like the Russian nesting dolls, where there's a little doll inside another doll. They're all the same. They just get progressively bigger. A congregational conflict is like that. And you peel off what you see, and then maybe need to peel off some more and find out some other things about it. So there's always this process of learning and growing and trying to meet what the issues are. And if this doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board and figure out, well, what did we miss? What else is going on?
because we're peeling back all of this to get to the root cause, right?
Yeah, correct. Root cause is a good phrase.
Okay.
Exactly. I'm glad you reminded me of that. That was a good one you came up with. Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe there's not a root cause. Maybe there's several root causes, of course, because it's a system, and it is context, and it is history. And there's all kinds of dynamics going on, and you never know exactly which one to push or to nudge or to shift that will actually make a difference in the history, in the situation. You just
Okay,
have to try it.
prior to the hypothesis, do we give like a story, a truncated story of what we think is going on, or background?
The chapter on that describes exactly what it gives an explanation of what we think is going on. It could be in metaphorical terms if it's difficult to really describe, or it could be very clear. You've taken into account as much of the reality and the relationships as you can. You're always kind and loving, rather than saying, well, you got these bunch of jerks over here, and that's the problem. That's not going to be very helpful. You try to find a way of saying, here's what we think is going on, that gives you a leverage to move into the future with some sense that we can make a difference. I was telling Barbara that I came up with a beginning of a whole hypothesis about my little church that's having trouble. We've talked about in this class, where they dismissed the choir director, and people are acting just awful to each other.
Still?
Still.
You mean it
Yeah.
even after Easter and the Holy Week?
Easter. Never mind about Jesus. We want things the way we want them. And that awful pastor is making it impossible, and they're mistreating this dear person who we love dearly, and on and on and on. Yeah. The awfulness is included people who have specifically targeted members of the board and the pastor and the pastor's family to aim criticisms directly that's going to hurt them.
Oh no.
It is intentionally cruel.
Oh no.
So all of that's going on. It was long predicted that, okay, you got a 36-year musician who's used to having things her way. A new pastor comes in who wants the things the way he understands things need to be. And in my sense, he's correct. This is the way an appropriate way to run a church in the 21st century now. And all hell broke loose. I see this as it's kind of like an old computer. You got a computer that's 10 years old, 5 years old even, and it's out of date.
Mhm.
It no longer works well with the kind of programs that you need for working in 2021. It's
Mhm.
not bad. It just needs to be upgraded, updated.
You're very contemporary for your wise age.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and so the problem is, I don't want to have to buy a new computer. I don't want to put new programs on that I have to learn how to run, because it's going to mess up. I know how to do it the way it is now,
Mhm.
and it's comfortable. Change is not comfortable for us. This congregation needs to update its system. It needs to get clear about boundaries. It needs to get clear about the roles and rules around its committees and its boards. And it's that the pastor has been about that. And that's a piece of what happened, I think, with the choir director and musician. But we've got to figure out a way to align ourselves into what we need to learn. And I need to learn a whole lot. It's not just those people who need to learn.
Mhm.
We all need to learn how to transform ourselves into what we can be to be a faithful church to Jesus Christ in 2021 and 2022 and on in the future. That's a hopeful hypothesis in my mind. In a way, the choir director has done the congregation a big favor. She refused to change, refused to adapt to new roles and rules that the pastor was insisting on his right to be the supervisor and the head of staff, the sessions, the board's restrictions on the use of the building. She just defied that consistently. And she finally got her behavior so bad that they had to say, no more, that's it. And I think she did the congregation a favor by saying, see, this is what happens when we let things just, everything, anybody does whatever they want to. And it's not working anymore.
Is it a
So,
mixed congregation?
all
Meaning
white.
age-wise? No,
Oh,
age, I was thinking age.
age-wise, yeah. A number of kids, a number of young families, a lot of middle-aged people, and a lot of old folks. Typical congregation.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the membership?
About 200, I would say. Relatively small.
But active membership.
Oh yeah, that's that's the ones that are around. Usually, when things were before the pandemic, we were having 130, 140 in worship, which is
That's good for a small church.
Yeah, we've been running 70 screens on Zoom on Sunday mornings,
Nice.
which is maybe in many cases double that or triple that in terms of number of people, including little kids who are there. Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, for a church that size, that's a sizable amount for a Sunday.
Oh yeah, we were doing well.
Yeah.
Until this happened. So yeah.
And how are the younger people responding to this?
They're
The
divided.
families, they're divided as well as the older.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the pastor has reached out to all?
He's been trying to. He probably could do a better job of that. But when you're under personal attack, it's awfully hard to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, especially if it's directed at your family.
Yeah. One of my experiences as a pastor is whenever they start complaining about something, they usually pick something that's close to being accurate for me. you have the messiest desk we've ever seen, Pastor. We can't stand it. Well, that's true.
Mhm,
But why is that such a big deal?
mhm.
But it hits me personally and it feels very personal. Always.
Because that's your space.
Yeah.
That is your space. Wow.
So,
Now, is this the congregation that has the African American pastor?
No,
Okay.
he has studied Black church history and Black church leadership.
Mhm.
And so he's been pushing Black justice issues, especially this past summer and fall when Louisville has just been burning up with the riots, the protests after the death of the young woman who was killed in a
Breonna
blowout.
Taylor.
Yeah, Breonna, yeah.
Doctor,
Yes, ma'am.
my question is, as I went back over and read, chapter 7, because I had jumped the gun.
Right.
And as you was talking, I noticed with change, it seemed like when they bring about change, they don't want to do away with the old rules. And I think that's a big hindrance in the church. A lot of people call it religion, and religion is basically a set of rules and everything. But you can't, like the scripture said, you can't put new wine in old wineskins.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like they be trying to they want to go into the new change, but they want to keep certain rules. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work out well. It doesn't fit.
Right. Yeah, that's a good analogy, Barbara. Exactly
It
right.
certainly is, yeah.
And the problem of Easter and the true transformation is things are, if you let God into your life, things are really going to be different and you can't be the same old self you are.
Exactly.
But no, thank you. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
This requires transformation. It requires shifting. The strategies have to be, you can't succeed asking for wholesale shift and change in everything. That's not going to work. You have to push a congregation as far as they can to the places that will make the most difference without expecting the whole thing to shift right away.
Yes.
That's why that comment about you have to disappoint people at the rate they can stand.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. I like that analysis. Yes.
So you begin to figure out, so what can we do to nudge and perturb the system a little bit to encourage health instead of unhealth? What can we do? What can be done?
We could get the people involved and let the people bring some of their suggestions. People have a tendency to feel like when they play a part of something, they are more willing to make that change. You understand what I'm saying? Like you just said, we got to disappoint them at a rate that they could stand. So you have to involve all of them, right, and allow them to express their input, and even if you have to get diplomatic and take a vote on it, this is better because like I said, I know personally, and I know how people are. People have a tendency to be willing to change when they feel that they're a part of that change, that they're a part of making something different. And
if I feel like I was heard, I'm more likely to go along with something, even if it doesn't end up the way I wanted it. I know at least I had a chance to say my piece and it was heard and appreciated. That's true.
Yes.
I almost always have lots of listening sessions with a congregation where I meet with individuals or small groups of people and just let them tell me what they think is going on and what they want out of the situation. And then I summarize all that in a report back about here's what I think is going on, so that people can read the report and say, you see, he listened to us.
Yes.
So you're exactly right, Barbara. That's one strategy that helps them determine where are we going to go next, and that it's more in tune with what those people want and think.
Yeah.
right.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's good.
Well, I have a question. Is there an alignment between those two age groups with respect to the path that the church would like to move in?
It's hard to tell at this point. Because all the groups are fairly well split. I haven't seen, and of course I don't know exactly who's where, because we're never get together when,
Mhm.
and people aren't telling me things.
Are they split like along the lines, whereas some have like long-standing with the church and others are new?
No, it seems to be both. There are people on both sides of both things.
Okay.
Some of the long timers are saying, these are our leaders, and they've made a decision and I don't like it, but yeah. And there are others who are saying, well, that's crazy. She's been here for 36 years. How can you do that terrible thing to this nice woman?
Yeah.
So it goes both ways. I think a piece of it is part of my hypothesis, what I'm not sure I put in a hypothesis, is that the difference between the people at either side is emotional maturity, the ability to look at a situation and think about, how does this make sense in a larger way, rather than, that's not what I want it to happen the way I want it.
Mhm.
There's an
Yeah.
awful lot of that reactivity, which is an emotional turmoil. And a lot of, it's during the COVID, and a lot of people's lives are in turmoil anyway. It's not ununderstandable.
Mhm.
But
No, that's true.
the personality types, I think, are kind of falling into those kind of distinctions.
Mhm.
And there's
I guess I was asking more like with the younger group, are they relatives of many of the elders?
no,
Okay,
they're relative. They're some of them been around for 10 or 15 years or stuff, but they're relatively newcomers.
okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot of multiple families situations in this church.
Right.
That urban changes prevented that
Mhm.
from happening over the
Mhm.
years.
And a lot of these churches, people have a tendency to get into cliques. They get
Yeah.
into these cliques, and when they in these cliques, it's like the whoever's the leader or the facilitator or whatever, they find that person let them get away with a lot more stuff, or give them the opportunity to do a lot more. And when that's taken away from them, they have this sense of, it's really not a sense of loyalty, but it's like more like, where do I fit in now? And like Dr. Sawyer and I discussed last week, people don't like to rock the boat. They like to stay in their comfort zone. When you start find people that let them have their way, and let them do whatever they want to do just because they're in their clique or they get along with them, they're good friends and all that stuff. And right there, when you're doing that, you're leaving God out the picture, because as leaders, we cannot show no partiality. We have to be as much as we can be like Jesus when it comes to leading a life or being a pastor of a church where we are responsible for other people. All people must feel that they are part of the church. When a person don't feel like they're part of the church, then you start like Dr. Sawyer is teaching us and talking to us about now, conflict. And this is what I found out. When you got these leaders and choir directors or people that got close to them, when they're gone, they know that with somebody new coming in, well, they may not like me as much as that person. They're not going to say this, but this is what they think, because you got to remember, they're never going to get to the real nitty gritty of what's really the situation is.
Right.
Because to tell the truth about the situation is to be selfish. And nobody's going to do that, especially in a church. They don't want to come across that way.
Hmm.
So that's why I believe with the conflicts and all that, that's what I love about your book. It's not so much of being able to solve or bring about a solution, but it's to bring the church to a point where we can function and make the church functionable and growing for everybody to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And
Bring everybody in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so we can feel and everybody feel like they're in a church that loves them. And this is their home. And this is where they come when they need comfort and guidance, from God. We have to get to that point. And that's what's a problem with a lot of these churches. They got too many cliques and little groups and people setting off to their side. You understand what I'm saying? That's the thing.
That's true in this church. A number of folks. I've been, we came to Louisville in 2002 and started worshiping there on and off. If my wife was a pastor someplace else, we'd go off for a couple of years and come back. So it's been almost 20 years. And we have felt, and other people who've sort of joined the church in that period have said to us, yeah, it's hard to join this church. It's hard to feel like you're in group, because there's a lot of other groups, cliques, like you said, Barbara, that everybody knows when John stands up to talk about his daughter, everybody knows about his daughter, except I didn't have no idea who this kid is.
Yeah.
But he assumes because his little in-group knows, everybody knows. So yeah, there's a lot of that, and I haven't figured out how to deal with those cliques.
Doesn't that go to
the big churches too?
What you were talking about, what you had suggested earlier, spiritual maturity?
Yeah.
And really each individual having the space and comfort level to share their insecurities, because that's at the core of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that several years ago, we had some ideas about building some small groups, which could be spiritual growth and spiritual nurture, and let people really work on it. Nobody wanted to do that at Crescent Hill Church. You
know what though, Dr. Sawyer? I think that's exactly what Barbara's saying. A lot of people just don't want to do it.
Right.
It really has, a lot of people don't want to do the work. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
So the structures are pretty clear. We don't have clear boundaries. We don't even hold people accountable for if they don't do their jobs. They don't hold them accountable if they're doing bad behavior. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And the committees have no particular job descriptions. The staff never had annual reviews of their work. Nobody ever held them accountable for anything. It was always just, you're doing a wonderful job. So the boundaries and the structures of the church are really pretty weak. And that's the major piece of the updating, I think. The stories of this church are, this is a church where we say, you are accepted here no matter what you think or what you believe.
All churches say that, Dr. Sawyer, for the most part. Well, but it's whether or not they actually practice it.
The conservative churches don't say that. They say you got to believe.
Oh, well, that's true too. That is true.
Here, it's okay if you're not crazy about Jesus, no big deal. But you're here and we like you, and so you're okay. So we have this sense of we are a friendly, loving, inclusive congregation that lets everybody be whoever they want to be. Is that true? No, because we have all these in groups and out groups. Mm-hmm. And so you're being who you really want to be is not working for a bunch of other people. But we never say anything to you about it. You just know you're iced out of the situation.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me what Monique just saying. Y'all ever heard of the comedian Ricky Smiley?
Yeah, I have, and I probably have heard him before.
Well, I remember one Sunday he came to our church. I think it was for a Mother's Day Sunday in Richmond, Virginia at St. Paul's Baptist Church, right? And he was in his joke routine. And then he stopped and he said, you know what? He said, Christians, y'all got to come on in and y'all got to start doing better. He said, y'all don't make Christianity look attractive. He said, you come into the church, he said, the ushers got a frown all in their face. I mean, he went off on them, but everything he said was true. He said, you got a frown on your face. And said, talking about welcome, you know, like you got an attitude and everything because you up at that time in the morning. He said, Christians don't make Christianity look attractive. So he said, so why did he said, so don't no wonder why people are not coming to church anymore. You know, and that is so right. We have to get back to making this thing look attractive, really do. We got to smile. We got to make people feel welcome. We got to make people feel comfortable, you know, and we got to remember it's not about us and it's not our house. It's supposed to be God's house.
That's a piece of maturity that we don't get. It's really about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Jesus loving me.
That's right.
And God taking care of me and all of my privileges, so I don't have to worry about anything. And don't mess with my choir because it is the way I want it.
Yeah, and they be saying stuff like that, my choir, and my choir went to so-and-so, we really don't, yo, that's not your choir.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? You know, and that's the whole thing.
That's the story. That comedian has got it. That's the story that we tell ourselves that's not accurate. Yeah. A friend of mine was just talking about, he saw an Easter service with his family at a big Presbyterian church in St. Louis. And he said, nobody in leadership smiled the whole service, whole Easter service.
What is that?
Where was the joy? Where was the celebration? Well, it's very serious. No, that doesn't work. That's exactly what you're saying, Barbara. So yeah, we got to think about the stories and how can we deal with that story? Or looking at the symptoms. The symptoms are clearly there's bad behavior going on. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much about the choir director, it's about whatever else is going on. And that is, I want what I want for my church when I want it. And I'm going to throw my weight around until I get it. That's a sign of something. We are projecting everything on the pastor and the board. They're the ones who have done this dastardly deed, and it was absolutely wrong, and they should have done it 3 different other ways. Never mind how they worked through it, did the best they knew how to do. They did it wrong. Anytime we project everything onto somebody or a group of people, that ain't it. You know, they process the process of the history of that, you know, the 2 long pastorates, bad interims in between. When the previous long-term pastor left, within 2 months after she retired, she had breast cancer. And everybody was concerned about Jane, but couldn't do it. She was distancing from the church, but that was a trauma for the church. And then a new pastor comes, and then COVID hits. We've been hit boom, 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 boom with all kind of hard stuff. And if you've already decided that your pastor, who is a wise and careful leader, isn't what you want, it's hard to pull a group together.
Exactly.
I think a lot of churches are going through this now, though, Dr. Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that COVID is the scab that's been pulled off.
Yeah.
And so now leadership roles are, being, a little unraveled.
Yep.
And true personalities are coming out.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I think that I don't think it's just what's going on in your church. And then
yeah.
with the heightened racial tensions going across the country, that may actually be something that's at the basis of it with the pastor, if he's pushing for social justice.
Sure, that's a piece of it for sure.
Mhm.
This is a very comfortable middle-class white congregation with maybe 2 or 3 persons of color in it.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're comfortable. We're
Mhm.
privileged. We have what the people in the West End are never going to have.
Yeah. That's sad.
Yeah,
Because what we miss out on the beauty that so many others could bring.
yeah, right.
You know, we miss all out, you know, I was always taught. And even when I was going through seminary, I was taught that never dismiss nobody's religion. Never say that this church ain't this and this church and that. This is what my pastor taught. He said, because every church has some truth, you know.
Right.
And that I'm so glad, because my pastor, he was the first pastor I ever seen. He used to actually invite pastors to our church, you know, to preach. Big pastors, pastors just getting started. If you sound that kind of word, you was welcome at our church. And it gave us an opportunity to meet so many different pastors and hear different perspectives, you know, but it all is the truth. It all is about, you know, it was this little comedy skit on Facebook. It said, how come people have so many different religions, but only one devil?
That's a good one, Barbara.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was on Facebook. A little girl asked
gosh.
it. Yes, she did. And that, you know what? That have a lot of people going,
That's true.
That's something to think about. She was like, how come there's so many different religions, but only one devil?
Mhm.
That's good. That's good.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, my goodness, you know, and the Bible says, we all got together. We all got to get on the one cord.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, the pastor has started actually calling in his sermon on Easter sermon Sunday. He actually talked fairly directly about the troubles that are going on in the congregation, including that there's some bad behavior and some attacks on people. And calling it out is a good thing.
Yeah.
My wife is a part-time volunteer on the staff for pastoral care. And we both care about the congregation. We found ourselves, you know, when I first talked to you about it, I was still pretty upset about it. I didn't know what to do, because I love this congregation. I don't want it to go down the tubes. I don't want it to fail. I don't want this pastor to fail. And we finally had to realize, so all this change has got to happen. And where does the change start? It's going to start with me.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out what I can and can't do at Crescent Hill Presbyterian Church. And there's a fairly limited amount of what I can do. I can support the pastor 100%. I can let him know I'm in his corner. I'll offer him any advice or suggestions he asks for. I can help offer whatever other things he's looking for. I can throw in a comment from here, there, but always affirming, complimentary, encouraging. I can do that. I think I've already been closed out of making any suggestions to the congregation as a whole. The couple of that I've tried on Facebook have been attacked. So okay, I can't do anything.
Mhm.
We have a group of 4 couples that get together every other week. It's been by Zoom this past year, just to share being together, our care, our faith, our care for each other. And we have determined we're going to be a little pocket of health in this congregation. We're not
Amen.
going to be reactive. We're not going to jump on anybody. We're not going to jump on it for ourselves. We're just going to stay steady and hold tight to what we believe in. And maybe that'll affect the whole church in some way. Those are the two things we've discovered we can do. My wife can make phone calls and do pastoral care and kind of cover some of the emotional needs as she can. But she's at the moment, she's not talking to the same of these people that are the attackers. She can't handle it anymore. So
Sometimes it gets like that.
Yeah, strategic thing is I'm going to focus on what I can do and very limited amount of what that is and offer that. That's it. That's all I can do. And then I
And
quit
being
beating
and
up
living in
myself.
your faith. And that's
Yeah. Then I don't have to beat up on myself that I'm not doing anything, which of course
Exactly.
I should be.
Exactly. That's what I tell my grandson every time when he go out. You be the light in the situation. You be the light in the midst of your friends. Let your light shine.
Yeah.
All that you can do. Don't worry about anybody else. Let your light shine,
Yeah.
and God will do the rest, and that's all you can do. Let your light shine in the situation. Do what you can do. Be the man that you can be in the situation. And I believe that's where we take accountability for ourselves.
That's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
we step into the situation.
that fits my hypothesis is that
Yes.
only I'm going to work on what do I need to learn? What do I need to change in me? What long held issues and problems and traumas in my life am I bringing to this situation that I need to deal with those and not lay it on the situation? I've got to work on myself.
That's right.
That's all I can do at the moment.
That's it. Now that's what you call spiritual maturity, because when you can accept that, look, I don't know everything and I don't always get everything right, but I'm going to be the best that I can be in this situation, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to always let my light shine as long as I can. And I believe when we do that much, when we hold ourselves accountable for our own actions, then we allow God to do the best in us.
Yeah.
Bring out the best in us.
Yeah. That's good. So, chapter 7, the description is mission church. A pretty interesting set of stuff. We tried a bunch of stuff there. Partly, we started by challenging the stories on page 120. And partly you did that by just asking people to tell stories about the life of the church. It's a relatively young church. And so that they just kind of put stuff out on the board and made a big story. And then we tried to come up with what we call an archetypal story. So what's the underlying common story that's true in a larger setting of this? And a lot of these situations, we were able to come up with some kind of a myth, a Greek myth or a Bible story that really captured, here's what's going on in this church. In this case, we couldn't come up with anything, but the interim pastor said, this is kind of like Garrison Keillor and Lake Wobegon. And that whole business of people looking out for each other, trying to make things the best they can, everybody trying to be above average. That was more the story, the true story of Mission Church than anything they were telling themselves. So that was, it gives you an example of how you work these issues, challenging the stories, challenging the symptoms of the whole business of this social service agency that was taking over the life of the congregation. And the head of that organization was pretending like he was the pastor of the church. And he was just taking it over. The image we had of that, somebody said, you know, if you got a pot, and you plant two plants in it, and one is a great big healthy plant, and the other one is a kind of a weaker, smaller plant, what's going to happen in that pot? The big plant is going to take over and just crowd out the little one.
Mhm.
And that's a symptom of what's going on in Mission Church at that point. We got to figure out how to make their relationship work in such a way that it's not a power struggle between one and the other. Because if it's a power struggle, the brotherhood of man is gonna win. And that's not good for the church or for the social service agency. So that's one of the systems we've tried to work on challenging. That was hard. That we didn't get very far with it. People really climbed all over the interim pastor for trying to do that. She just kept listening. She played on that page 125. She played rope-a-dope. Remember Muhammad Ali and rope-a-dope?
Yeah.
His opponent would get him on the ropes and just keep hitting him, and he just kept bouncing off the ropes. And he was so strong that he could take it. And you don't need to fight back. You just let them wear themselves out and attack you.
That's right.
So she did some of that to try to deal with that. We tried to bring in the two pastors back, former pastor who was still very much involved in the church, and but informally, and nobody acknowledged that they were talking to him. And they tried to bring him back to speak at an anniversary and maybe give a blessing to the way this life of this church is carrying on. That would have been, it's kind of like if you got a family in trouble, if you could bring the grandparents in, maybe you can find some balance in the situation. That's what we were thinking about. Jerry refused to come back. He didn't want to be part of it.
Wow.
But that was that was a cross-generational strategy. We also could use the denominational, the power of the connectional denomination being Presbyterians in this case. The regional governing body could put some pressure on a congregation to do certain things to make things healthier. So that's a possible. Balancing the unhealthy power of the congregation with the healthy power of an outside responsible group. And then we talked about working with the subsystems. In this congregation, you know, I told you that she discovered that the key troubled people who are so involved with the conflict were also families in conflict, were in trouble themselves. They lost their jobs, they were facing divorce, their kids were facing difficulties in school or with mental health issues.
So they were deflecting.
Yeah, and so all that unrest in the families gets played out in the life of the congregation because it's all interconnected.
It's all interconnected. You know what I would always say? I always told people that when my children were younger, that when I was like, when I wasn't on a clear path, neither were they.
Yeah, right.
It was so clear to me, you know, that if I wasn't focused, they weren't focused.
Right.
So it's important.
Yeah. So that's a good experience. Yeah. I've got somebody wanting to enter this meeting, and this isn't their meeting. I have to get rid of that. So that becomes an important piece. You got to have to think about who's really is. Then I get to what I call paradoxical interventions. And this is where it gets really tricky, and you have to be sure you're doing it with love. One of the things we suggested, and therapists do this a lot with families and with individuals, is to suggest something that's so outrageous that they will refuse to do that and get healthier instead.
Say that again.
So you recommend that they have to do something so outrageous that in order to rebel against the therapist, it sends them fleeing into doing something healthy. In this case, we recommended that the Mission Church have a season of dealing with conflict, where they would act out some real serious conflicts among themselves and practice that and be in a real fight with each other, but play acting, and see how that works. They didn't want to do that. They refused to do that. But that got them thinking about, oh, we're doing this already. Our old teacher, Ed Friedman, whose book you have, tells the story. His mother worked and was in her 70s, and she worked all her life, was a very healthy 70-something woman, and she decided she was going to retire. Now, Friedman thought that was a really bad idea because she would wilt on the vine, or she'd be trouble for everybody else if she didn't have anything to do. So she retired, and she was miserable and making life miserable for everybody else. So one Sunday he says, "Mom, we're going to take a drive." And he took her around to retirement homes.
Oh, no.
And I want you to know this, here's a wonderful place you can play canasta all you want, day in and day out. We have all the shuffleboard. Look at all these wonderful things you can do here. And after they visited 3 of them, she went home and the next day applied and got another job.
Because that's shock therapy.
It was reversed. It reverses. You go against what you really want to happen.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
don't you dare go do that thing. Or here's what you can do. Oh my God, I don't do that. And it's what we call, if you live in northern climates, I don't know if you experienced this, Barbara, but when it snows and the road is slick and you start to skid, your desire is to turn against it. No. You have to turn into the skid.
Yeah.
This is turning into the skid, doing just what the system wants to do, but it's unhealthy. But you figure out how to guide that in a way that they'll say, no, let's don't go that way.
Right.
If I had more opportunity to work with Crescent Hill, I'd look for some good paradoxical interventions, but I can't do that because I have no authority to do anything at this point. And the presbytery is refusing to help as well. But those are all things you can try based on your hypothesis, based on the understanding of the stories and the structures and the symptoms, to see if you can nudge the system into health. You can't force them to get healthy. You can't talk them into it. You have to find ways to get inside that system a little bit and encourage health.
I just have a question. Do you think that us being physically disconnected at this point may be adding to, I don't know, the anxiety of people and really making them like become really set in their ways? I'm just going, like for me right now, I'm really interested in seeing how people reconnect after all of this Zoom.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm
hard.
really interested in thinking, like seeing it. And not only that, looking at how dioceses are operating now,
Mm-hmm.
with all of the social action going on outside of that.
Right.
Like, this is going to be really, really interesting coming back. This is, I don't even know what to say anymore, except pray.
Right.
But what do you think is going to, do you think that this is adding to the issues?
Oh,
The
you bet.
separation?
The separation and the anxiety and the discomfort of not being able to hug each other, not being able to see each other, not being able to talk like we're used to doing. And then here's one take I have on that, Monique, and that is we want to get back to normal. Normal wasn't all that good.
Sure wasn't.
And going back to the way we always were is not what I'm looking for. But can we come up with new ways of being church, being a diocese, being a whatever organization that builds on what we learned during this time? We can do a lot of stuff online that we'd never thought about doing before. But we can also do more in person and learn how to do that in better and clearer ways. We can figure out how do we meet each other's needs in both ways.
I guess I was thinking along those lines, but also with us being away from each other for such a long period of time, applying all of these new resources back into the space.
Yeah.
Like how does that work?
I think about this song every time when I think about us coming out of this and coming back to the church. It says, sing a wondrous song of Jesus, sing a song of his works. When we all get together, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout for victory. I think that people miss each other so much. I think they miss that spiritual atmosphere so much that when we get back together, being that we learned so much and we've seen so much about ourselves during this pandemic, just to be back in the house of the Lord to worship together. I believe a big change is coming about, people. I really do. I think it's going to be, people are more, hopefully, it's not just me. I know I've grown a whole lot,
Mhm.
and it's not just me. And I just believe that people are so eager now to just serve God. Because along with this, it's a lot of gratitude. To be able to come back to church, you made it through this pandemic, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
That's true. I agree with you 100%, Barbara.
People have so much gratitude. So I look for the goodness in people. I really do.
So maybe there's
situations.
So
Yes.
maybe, are you saying, Barbara, there's more openness to new things because
I
we'll
believe
back
it
together?
is. Yes, I do. I believe it is.
That's encouraging.
At least I hope it is.
Right.
I hope it is.
And if our leaders can actually tell the truth,
Yes.
how was it when we were separated? How was it? How did we live? How did we deal with it? What did we learn? What did we struggle with? And how hard was it? Where did we get in trouble? Yeah, we got in trouble some. The country went crazy over an election. We went crazy over Black people getting killed in the streets. And what happened to us? What did we learn? And how can we carry that? We've got to be willing to do that rather than go back to saying, okay, we're just going to be like we always were. God bless us, everyone. We got to get back. My salary. I'm your pastor. That's it.
We got to get back to the church being the difference.
Yeah.
We got to get back to that. We got to get back to the church being the difference than everybody else We got to get back to that love. We got to get back to that embracing one another. We got to bring God back into the situation.
Yes, that is the key. That is the key. And that is the core that should be holding us all together.
And I got to admit that I'm going to have a hard time getting back in the sanctuary with some of those people, knowing what they have done.
We're praying on it.
Well, yeah,
I know, I hear
I got to
you.
work on myself, but that's
I
a
hear you.
huge challenge. And they may be wishing I wasn't there too, probably. So, yeah.
And maybe not, maybe by that time, they will have reflected, self-reflected. Maybe. There is always that possibility.
Yeah. Yes, people change and God can change them.
People change when the circumstances dictate that they change.
Right.
And that's just the truth. But it can happen. And these are circumstances, these are global circumstances right now.
Right. Right.
So when Barbara brought up gratitude, you know, I'm grateful, but you know, like, am I really, really grateful? Like, I'm really grateful now. You understand what I'm saying? But we have to go through some things in order to appreciate and be grateful for today, this second. I mean, we don't have to be here, you know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And taking into account the losses and the griefs and the pain and the suffering that we've gone through with all this as well. You have to take all that into account. If you don't, you're pacing it over and making a lumpy wall where you thought you were going to put a nice piece of wallpaper.
I really believe that this is a time period where that's fertile ground to grow spiritually, because even as we move through this, and we are moving through it, I'm convinced of that. Even as we move through this, we don't even know what the devastation is going to look like on the other side.
Right. Right.
Because so many people have been impacted and are suffering.
Right.
And it's not directly in our faces.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was reading an article that said that 25% of the people in New York City have not paid their rent.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of families. We have to think hard and long about, you know, like being in service and being in service to God. Because if you're in service to God, as far as I'm concerned, you're going to benefit, everybody benefits.
If you're really in service to God and not what I think God is.
Exactly, right. Right. If you're
My
really in service to
my
God.
privileged white God may not be there, but yeah.
And that's when you have to ask God to show you how to let your light shine.
Right. Right.
If you see this and you're around this, you got to ask God, well, how do I let my light shine?
Yeah.
How do I make the difference? Even if it's no more than just to say something comforting to somebody in a tough situation. Remember, we may not can solve the problem, but we could at least give somebody another way of looking at it so they could get through
it. We don't need heroes.
Exactly.
We need people of faith to just simply be kind, be thoughtful, be respectful. A kind word, a nice smile goes a long way.
Goes a long way, you know. Just sometimes just to sit and listen to a person. Somebody told me silence is the most powerful words that a person could ever speak.
That's true. Listening, yeah. Yeah, I've forgotten now what it was. I guess it was some kind of a medical telephone call about a medical appointment or something, and I thanked the person for helping me through it, even though it had been difficult and I wasn't able to do what I really wanted to do. But I thanked her. She said, "Oh, thank you so much for saying that."
Mhm.
That little bit of something.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm.
A little bit of something. Exactly. That's right, doctor. A little bit of something can go a long way. It's just like your faith. Just
So
a
the
little
whole
bit.
the whole business of dealing with church conflict is figuring out I can't do everything. I may not be able to do a lot. And it may not work out. Who knows? That's in God's hands, not mine. But
Exactly.
I figure out what can I do or what do I need to do to make that work.
That's right.
That's the core of it.
Mhm. It's like the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to change the things that I cannot change, to change the things that I can.
Yeah.
No, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I
Things
cannot change.
I cannot change.
The courage to do the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
That's what we need, you know.
And I discovered recently that the rest of that prayer from Reinhold Niebuhr is just for today.
Just for today.
And
That's
hey,
right.
that's a big deal.
I mean, I've been to them in their meetings and everything. And I love when they do that serenity prayer, because they end it just like that, just for today.
Yep.
Just give me what I need to
That's
make
it.
it. And
Yep.
the word says he give you enough in every day. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow is already taken care of. You got to live for today and be the best that you can be in today, just for
That's good.
today.
That's good.
Yes.
So have you got your information about this class? I forgot to look and it's upstairs. I don't know what the assignment is for next week. Can you look up and see what it's supposed to be? I think it's.
I thought we were supposed to start on our paper.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I sent you something.
How did you send it to me?
I sent it via email, Gmail.
Really? Okay. When was
Well, it's
that?
not for you to read right now.
No, I want to make sure I got it. That's the main thing.
Okay.
Because I didn't see
But
it.
one thing that you brought up, which I think is going to be critically important, is for pastors, reverends, whomever, once they take the pulpit, when they get back, it's about being truthful.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. Here, I see it.
Because
There's
okay.
your draft. Very good.
It's just what I was.
Well, no, wait a minute. I see the email. I don't see the attachment.
You don't see the attachment? You sure?
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, it is. I got it. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Terrific. I just want to be sure because
It's only like a couple of paragraphs that I went into.
it's a good start. Okay.
But just thinking about it from a different perspective.
Good. I'll get back to you on it. That's great. Yeah.
You may say, you're totally off, but please do.
I'll be gentle.
Okay, you don't have to be. I'm feeling better.
That's good. That's good. So yeah, I know we were supposed to be sharing your papers research. Is that what the next 2 weeks were? We're getting close to the end of the semester.
Yes.
And I don't have my calendar in front of me. I
And
mean,
I'm thinking, because when
so next Thursday, the 15th and 22nd, got basically 3 more weeks of class. And one of the weeks was going to be review. So yeah, probably the next 2 we were supposed. Yeah, I don't remember whether I had assignments from the book or whether we were just going to hear your papers and report them. Of course, I thought we might have 10 people to class too, but we have quality instead of quantity.
What did you say, Barbara?
I ain't saying nothing. I'm listening to the doctor. He's talking.
She was agreeing with what I said.
Oh, okay.
Anybody see what the assignment was for next week? On the
I can't
syllabus or
see
anything?
mine. I
Hold
can't
on
pull
one
mine
second.
up at the
I
same
have
time.
papers everywhere, but I have them in files. Hold on.
I'm trying not to go upstairs and do a lot of walking around. I've got an injury to my heel that I'm still dealing with, so I'm not walking a lot.
Okay.
All right, just to let you all know, I have too many files, okay?
Okay.
I have just too many files, too many places, okay?
Pardon me.
I think we have one more meet. I know it's some research. Then we're supposed to do our paper, and then right down at the bottom, we have to, we get extra points for seeing Miss Linda.
Say that again, Barbara. It wasn't very clear. It was garbled. Try to say it again.
I said, I remember saying that we had research meeting. I guess that's when we meet next Thursday. Then we're supposed to work on our papers. And then we have underneath it, when we meet with Miss Linda, we get extra credit. And that's supposed to be the end of the semester.
I'm still not hearing you. I'm sorry. It's really
Oh.
garbled.
Can you hear me now?
A little better. Talk slower and see if that works.
Okay. I remember seeing research,
1 second.
then the paper, and then you had under that extra credit if we meet with Miss Linda.
Yeah. I think the paper is due, the final paper is due the 23rd, as I recall.
Yes. April 23rd.
Yeah.
So we do have a class next Thursday. And I guess that's when we do the research. And then we go that, because after that, it'll be going into the 23rd and our papers due.
Well, but I was hoping that there would be you would reporting to each other what you've done on your paper. And I don't remember whether I assigned another chapter of the book to finish up or not.
I think it is another chapter that we're supposed to do, but I just can't remember. I think we're supposed to do chapter 8.
Well, chapter 8 is about leadership, but that's a really nice chapter, but it doesn't really conclude. What I was thinking that I would have you read chapter 9 to finish up the reading of the book. That brings everything together as to, so this book was written like a mystery novel and begin with, here's church conflict and here's lots of ways of dealing with it, but there's a lot of mysteries about it. And then the method of here's several ways of going at it. And now at chapter 9, it says, here's why the conflict, the 3 keys to conflict, structure, stories, and symptoms work. And here's how I answer all the questions, like the detective explaining how the murder happened. That's how the book was put together.
Well, I can send you an email as soon when I get back home.
I'm looking at a printout from assignments, and for April 12th, you have, well, which would be the following Thursday, which wouldn't be the 12th, but it says, does the method work?
No.
Yeah, so next Thursday is,
Right, it's,
Yeah,
the
the
12th would have been Tuesday, but
well, that was for the week
right,
off.
right.
I didn't know. Yeah, so the week for the 15th, so that would be chapter 9. does this, how does this work and does it work?
Mhm.
Good. And we'll talk about that. And if any of you wants to report on your paper stuff and tell us where you are, that'd be great. We'll do the same thing on the 22nd, the last week of class. Then would be the Thursday, the 29th. And that's when we'll review everything and get ready for the final exam, which is, we'll sit and work through I'll give you a church conflict problem. And the three of us will work it out according to this method.
Okay.
Okay,
That's me being a big troublemaking professor.
okay,
Okay,
Okay, Barbara,
yes,
I'll be calling you.
okay,
And I'll be calling you, Dr. Sawyer, or you could probably email me once you read what I wrote and,
I will do that and then we'll be in conversation. Yeah, that'd be
okay.
good. 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 Super. It's always good being with you all. Thank you.
It's always being good.
thank
Yes,
you, doctor. You have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Hope you continue to feel better, Monique.
Thank you. I'm going to just try and just focus in on everything that I have to do, complete. Because I am like behind. And I don't like that feeling. I just don't like that feeling.
Give yourself some breathing room too. Don't.
I don't
stick
have any
back in.
breathing room. Wait, you know what I said to myself? I said, I'm a student. I work part-time. I'm an assistant attorney for myself. Right?
I'm gonna leave y'all good people.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
And we'll
care.
be,
All right,
good night.
Bless you.
all right.
And
Bye-bye.
I'm just trying to like keep it together at this point for the last few weeks, but yeah, it took me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
It took
Well,
me
I
out of
mean,
I was in court for 2 days last week. And I felt the vertigo coming on.
Well, the
I felt
stress
it.
of that. The stress of
Yeah,
that.
I felt it coming on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I felt it coming on. So I felt it come, but I'm okay because my attitude is talk about it, hide nothing, be upfront, and
Good.
keep moving. And I so appreciate you. Thank you very much.
So it's none of my business, but give me a clue of how did the court stuff go for you in general?
It was back to back 2 days last week.
Yeah.
It was Wednesday and Thursday. It was Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
And then when I felt it coming on though. I think it was Wednesday and Thursday or Tuesday and Wednesday, but I felt it coming on. And I was trying to like, okay, take a nap here but sometimes it doesn't work like that because your head just starts spinning and then you get nauseous and it's a terrible feeling.
I've had it, I know, yeah.
It's a terrible feeling. I tell people you could be laying down and your head could be spinning. Yes. It's a horrible feeling.
And helpless, you're so helpless.
Yes, and you're nauseous and yeah. So it was that. I don't know. What I can say to you is that there's just something really, really wrong with him. And I'll be honest with you, I stayed for as long as I did because I was letting people read the Bible to me, interpret the Bible for me.
Right.
Right, from all aspects, synagogue, but not even that, just hearing him when he gave his deposition. I mean, it's just bizarre. But what's more shocking to me is how many people he's enrolled.
Oh.
That's more shocking to me.
Boy.
Yeah, that's more shocking to me. And at first it really like, this has been going on for 3 years. At first it really took me off guard and I was frightened.